Well, what do we have here? I'll get back to that shortly. For now, let's talk about a young Aussie critic and the magic of cinema. In the days of video stores, there was a very cool young man who would let me borrow movies I wasn't old enough to rent. The classification codes was such that you need a parent to get M or MA movies in Australia, essentially films for those 13 and 15 plus respectively, if you were younger as I was, and there were a few people at my local store who were very serious about these rules. Now one day I walked up to the video store with my pocket money in hand and began browsing the weeklies, which were films you could rent for 7 days at a cheaper price than the new releases. Naturally, I wanted to rent weeklies because then I could watch more movies for a low price. And on that day I saw this cover for Memento. I thought it looked so cool, and the blurb on the back of the case had me sold, but of course I was worried that I wouldn't be able to get it due to my age. So I slotted the film in between other age-appropriate titles in the hopes that the clerk wouldn't notice as he scanned each one through. Instead, this guy paused, looked up, held Memento to my face and said, "This is a good movie." As you can imagine, I was terrified I'd get in trouble, so I mumbled a weak cool, paid for my movies, and got out of Dodge as quickly as possible. I was a callow youth, and so I didn't realize how precious and rare it is to find someone who isn't a stickler for rules and just loves movies. And so I never made a point of befriending him. He would later go on to work elsewhere. A little while later, and my older brother came into my room one day. He said there was a new Batman movie on and asked if I wanted to go see it. I said yes, of course, and so we hopped on a bus and went to the movies together. We sat in a fairly empty theater where, as you can guess, Batman Begins was showing, and we loved it. The hype we felt when the Joker card was revealed at the end had us both beaming and chattering away as we left the theater that day. It was a beautiful moment with my brother, which still brings a tear to my eye, as we've since grown up and apart. Later still now, and I was in 7th grade with a high school teacher who was very supportive of my interest in writing. I had thrown a few big words together in a short story, and he recognized my interest in language, and also my foolishness at trying to appear intelligent. He encouraged me to be honest instead. One day he came into class and began talking about a great new movie he had just seen called The Prestige. He was a very bohemian man who had traveled the world and enjoyed discussing at great length the intricacies of The Sopranos, so I trusted his judgment and decided to take myself to the movies, because I was old enough now to do that on my own. So I went to my local theatre that weekend, and this was the first time I'd ever gone to the movies on my own, where I saw The Prestige in a fairly empty theatre once again, surrounded by middle-aged couples. I had an absolute blast, and the twist ending left me gobsmacked. As the credits rolled, I stumbled out of the theatre, marveling at just how right my teacher was. That was a great film. If you're new to this channel, then you might be wondering, when are you going to get to the review? And I just want to be very clear that I'll get to it when I'm good and ready. I can go all night talking about movies. I can usually go for like 20-30 minutes if I keep my Kegels rock hard. Obviously, you need foreplay to start off with. You never go in cold. There's a saying, pain is temporary, film is forever. And it seems to me that a lot of relationships are temporary too, even if you don't want them to be. But there is a sanctuary in this ever-changing world where you can connect and be at home. It's of course the theatre, and it's where you can psychically link into all the people around you and the artists who crafted the film up on the screen. A beautiful hive mind is made for a few hours in the dark, and you laugh, gasp, flinch and cry in unison with strangers because our souls have all come under the grip of the great conductor, who in this case is Christopher Nolan. He has stood often alone in the gap during the last rather mediocre decade and continued producing quality original films that demand to be seen on the big screen, and in so doing has made the world a better place. I know of more than one person, me included, who will say with a straight face that they were alone, depressed, hopeless, seriously considering ending it all and planning their escape in minute detail. And then they saw a movie. Somehow a hand from the other side of the world reached out through a screen and lifted them from the sludge they were drowning in, and gave them a gift so rare and so sweet you savor it for the rest of your life. Solace. A home away from home, a hug from above, a night at the movies. A good movie can be the difference between another shitty day on a shitty earth and a brief glimpse at something far more hopeful and uplifting. And Nolan has played a large part in continuing this beautiful tradition. Even if I don't consider all of his films to be as good as his adherents profess, I still can't deny that he has blessed millions with consistently high quality output. So if any filmmakers are watching this, don't ever forget that you play a bigger part in the lives of many more than you may realize. It's never just a movie. This This is a truth made manifest in Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk, which effectively balances his cerebral and bombastic storytelling interests with a genuinely rich heart, full of light and dark, that provides elevation for the soul when revealed. And now, yes, now, I'm going to get to the review. Dunkirk is where we get to see Nolan the genius in full flight, and yet, unsurprisingly really, it doesn't get the love it deserves from his fans. It really is an extremely frustrating world we live in. Your mid-work can be praised as brilliant, and then your brilliant work is considered mid. Maybe I'm crazy, or maybe everybody else just has lame taste, but I cannot for the life of me understand how Dunkirk has a 7.8 on IMDb.
Anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
From its perfect opening, beautifully combining an eerie soundscape, ever-ticking clock, hopeless soldiers scraping together resources, and then heart-pounding steady-cam shots as men flee death from an unseen foe, Dunkirk is a masterpiece. Here is a war film where all you have are young men, practically kids, trying to survive and get out of a hopeless situation. Run, 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 and hope to God there is a God who can pull your ass out of the fire and give you a minute to relieve yourself in the dirt like an animal. A war film where victory isn't glorious or impressive or heroic, it's simply survival. If you aren't breathless by the 15-minute mark, then you're made of stronger stuff than I am, because every time I watch Dunkirk, I'm blown away. Big brain Nolan is a cool guy, and I do like his films, but when he lets slip that underneath the cerebral exterior is a passionate man, well, that's when he really starts to kick ass. Raw emotions, hopeless situations, elemental motivations, Dunkirk is an exquisite film that I'm tempted to call something more, but I won't. Maybe because I'm a bit of a tease. I gotta keep Big Daddy Nolan on his toes after all. Consider this moment, which Tarantino rightfully called one of the best war scenes in history. It's so simple and perfectly conveys the heart of the film. There's nowhere to go, there's nothing to save you. Just stick your head in the sand and hope you make it. And we're right there with him. Then we get this monstrous image as men simply pick themselves back up and reform an orderly line to wait for salvation. Simple filmmaking is confident filmmaking, and Nolan was feeling himself here. He could have whipped out a fast-paced tracking shot along the beach as each bomb hit. He could have cut 20 different images together over an 8-second period to simulate chaos. He could have opted for heavy-handed music to drill home the shock and awe of it all. But he doesn't. Instead, he holds the camera steady and lets the horror wash over you. Death is coming, and there's nothing you can do to escape it. Seriously, if anyone is watching this, then please do review bomb Dunkirk's IMDb with some 10 out of 10s. I have to say this, and it's all in love, but The Dark Knight Rises should not have a higher rating than Dunkirk. Dunkirk is made up of so many exquisite set pieces that I'm hard-pressed to pick one to focus on. How can you compare the torpedoing of a ship with desperate soldiers escaping a scuttled and sinking fishing vessel? How can you compare ice-cold dogfights with the heart-pounding race to the mole by Tommy and Gibson at the start of the film? Dunkirk will leave you gasping for air, and so I do highly recommend you go and watch the film again. It's really worth a rewatch, or 2, or 3, or 4. Buy the DVD, mate. It's actually worth your time and money to do so. What I'd like to focus on, though, is the heart, for this is something Nolan is almost never praised for, and it's worth addressing. As I mentioned earlier, the guy is a little sweetie under the brainy exterior, and he let that out a bit more than usual in Dunkirk. Mark Rylance, Flop himself, as Mr. Dawson, takes us through a series of heartbreaking conversations with his son Peter, local boy George, as well as several soldiers on their journey to the shores of Dunkirk and back. I'll show a few of these moments, and I have no doubt you'll love all of them because big-hearted Nolan is a sweetie pie.
Under, Captain. And his son. Thanks for the help, George. What are you doing? You do know where we're going?
France.
Into war, George.
I'll be useful, sir.
Don't shoot! He's probably dead!
Simon, I hear you, Peter, I hear you! Maybe alive, maybe. Maybe able to help him.
Will you be okay? Boy.
Good.
hell were you?
They know where you were.
So I could be the winner.
Well, maybe next time you'll be the winner. How about we go and try again?
You can't go wrong with Rylance, and boy does he deliver a heaping helping of heart to heart with some beautiful conversations crafted by Nolan, the closeted angel in Babylon. Nolan is often burdened by the need to express a grand idea with a cumbersome monologue so the audience can understand what's going on with the story. Fortunately for us all, Dunkirk is an addition by subtraction film that allows those burdens to be done away with in favour of beautiful, sincere moments like you've just seen. Oh, and by the way, 33. Numerologists consider 33 to be a master number that represents great spiritual attainment. Christians consider that number to be the age of Christ when he died on the cross, and of course he stood at the peak of spiritual power during this event. Doctors consider 33 with regards to the number of vertebrae in your spine. New Agers believe the Kundalini spirit moves from the root chakra up to the crown chakra via the spine through numerous practices, including tantric sex, which is a great excuse to go have sex right now. Honey, please! How else am I going to become enlightened? 33 CC. It could be everything one needs to ascend or just a load of crock for vain old men who want to feel special in their little worlds. Either way, I like mind games, especially in my relationships with BPD art hoes, and this has been a game I've played exclusively with myself and innumerable directors I think of Freemasons since I was a teenager. Spot the pattern, the hidden message, the little clues that something more is baked into the picture, something for that special someone who is more than a passive participant in life. Yes, I'm aware this game exists so a vain young man can feel like he's special. You can acknowledge something is a vice and still love it. I think I've lost my mind in the process, but it has trained me to pay attention to details. I always read the clock faces just in case it's set to 33, such as in the recently released Dream scenario. I love the game and I hope anyone in the know will make it harder for me to play. Christopher Nolan most certainly did with Dunkirk, and in the process I do wonder if I found an homage to Drowning in Numbers with the out-of-sequence numbers we see on the boats and ships throughout the film. After rewatching Dunkirk, I also came away thinking Nolan would probably enjoy Alexander Scriabin's music too. It's just an intuition, but there's something in the structure and numbers on display which makes me think it's accurate. Scriabin was a theosophist who wanted to bring ritual into the art form and use it to change the world, which is something I find fascinating and would like to see take place through cinema, movie magic, literally. Google Scriabin's Prometheus ritual if you'd like to learn more. I found that artists who are interested in the mystery schools, although given how much information is available online, I doubt we can really call them a mystery anymore, tend to be of far greater interest than others around, and sometimes I think I was born too late. That gorgeous period in the late 19th and early 20th century when aristocratic souls were traveling this world and the next is something I've always enjoyed reading about. Sometimes I'll indulge in the fantasy that I'd have sided with Yeats in the Battle of Blythe Road against Crowley. Crowley was a young upstart too big for his boots, and everyone hates that. Oh no, that could describe me, couldn't it? But Crowley really was an arsehole, a bad cunt, if you will. He died in a rundown house with a heroin addiction, and that's one of the funny things about those schools of thought or religions. The people involved with them seem destined to end up looking pathetic far beyond simple entropy. Crowley and Blavatsky are truly hideous individuals. The same criticism applies to more accessible figures as well. Just look at this monster, Kenneth Copeland. You just know he'd hack you up into little pieces and eat you while preaching the Bible. While I can admire the Judge Holdenness of it all, I would never tolerate his presence in my life, and neither should you. Shoot all the televangelists and discover you are doing God's work in the process. I kid. Please no sue. Kenneth Grant seems like a cool dude though. I mention this because whilst physiognomy isn't an exact science, I do think it's a good heuristic for assessing the value of anyone who preaches a particular worldview. Even guys like Copeland, who have no doubt had plastic surgery, can't hide the rottenness within. It tends to show in the eyes. Monstrum in fronte, monstrum in animo, as the big guy once said. Or there's this one. The eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness. If Jesus and Nietzsche can agree on something, then you know it's probably worth bearing in mind. Then again, I really admire Rabelais, and just look at the guy. What an uggo. Great writer though. It's also why you can trust me, because I'm handsome and great in bed. Though my penis could be bigger. I guess you could call that the white man's burden. I nailed it. Oh God, I'm so funny, it kills me. If only it wasn't true though.
Hello, darkness, my old friend. I've come to talk with you again.
For anyone older than 40 who might be watching this, the entirety of online discourse can be summed up by images like this. You see, sir, your opinion is wrong because I placed it over the less impressive looking dog and the crying soy jack. Now my genius has been placed over the tall and handsome dog and the giga chad. Therefore I'm right and you're wrong. In doing this, internet schizos are continuing a long trend that Shay and Zeus walked in centuries before. Trust your eyes, mate. Oh, and in case anyone is confused, Christopher Nolan is handsome, which is why I mention it. Seriously, he's a good-looking guy. I'd date him. Where was I? Oh yes, Dunkirk is Nolan's genius film precisely because his big brain and his big heart held hands for the first time in his entire filmography and performed an elaborate dance for the entire runtime. They moved in dizzying synchronization to a rhythm only they can hear, but which stirs the hearts of all who watch the finished product. There are wheels within wheels working their way across the screen, and those with eyes to see can feel it. Here's another banger to consider.
Somebody's got to get off so the rest of us can live. Do you want to volunteer?
No. I'm going home.
And if this is a price...
I'll live with it. It's wrong. Go on!
Now I'll give a little context on the off chance someone hasn't seen Dunkirk. A Frenchman, Gibson, has saved the lives of numerous British men more than once throughout the entire run of the film. And now, when the Brits are all in danger once more, they betray him. No good deed goes unpunished, as they say, and there's so much which can be said here, and again, it's with an eye to the heart inside of the logic machine. Our French hero is an unsung heroic figure, and Nolan recognizes that these men littered the battlefield. They gave their lives not just in war, but in service to all humankind, and were shat on in the process. Man is an ignoble figure, but he can sense that he could be something more, and so Fion's Tommy is willing to behave like a beast and yet feel guilt at the same time. It's an extremely impactful moment and is expressed simply without the need for anything fancy placed to top it. A few minutes of film that resonate long after the credits roll and give you something meaty to chew on while you're waiting in line at the grocery store. And so I really do think Nolan is a big-hearted man. Perhaps being British has made him think all those icky emotions are something to be kept hidden away. But I prefer him like this because I think art works better when it's passionate and tactile. Dunkirk falls into the category of films you'd seriously consider trading a body part for just to say, yeah mate, that's my work. No, seriously, it is. I did that. Christopher Nolan is a very intelligent man and obviously a talented filmmaker, and in Dunkirk all his interests and abilities align so that he can produce something which blows me away every time I see it. To whomever got to the end, I highly recommend you go rewatch it. This is Christopher Nolan's best film, and you are wrong if you think otherwise. Finally, I must add that my earlier reviews were lame, and so I recently removed most of them. I was trying to fit in and maybe get a slice of that sweet ad revenue, but I just can't help myself. I'm a weird dude, an odd duck, and if I'm going to do something consistently, then I must be authentic. I've noticed my view count drop off a cliff since I made the switch, and so I just want to say that if you're watching this, then you're probably a weirdo too, and I love you more than you might realize. You're not alone. We're all like Bo, experiencing refuge with the orphans of the forest, except on the internet. And isn't that wonderful? Can you imagine how lonely you'd feel if you didn't have any other freaks to connect with? While the idea of traveling with Nicholas Roerich to Tibet to find Shambhala is something I salivate over several times a year, I still can't deny that this is the best time to be alive, warts and all, because connection has never been easier. Anyway, I'll stop here. Dunkirk is the masterpiece in Nolan's filmography because he found a way to balance out the big brain, which is self-evident from the structure of the film and the set pieces, with the big heart. Thanks to Mr. Dawson and moments like in the scuttled boat, and the world is better for it. If you're lurking on this video, Mr. Nolan, then please bear that in mind with your next film. Tell that big brain of yours to take a deep breath and let us see your spirit a little more. You have a very large one, mate, and it should shine forth more often. And yes, that is what she said. Thanks for watching.
You can practically see it from here.
What?
Home.